Hello and welcome to Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Theodore Henry. It's a pleasure having you on board as we journey through the pages of today's edition. Coming up, learn about the factors impacting productivity. Stay with us for these and more interesting features.
Whenever you hear the following tone, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, will be giving information on an emergency situation affecting the island. Please be on the alert and listen to your radio and television for further information. This was a test of the emergency alert system, brought to you by ODPEM.
We want a productive Jamaica. We are not productive Jamaicans. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity is the way to go for all us Jamaicans. Small business, big business, old and young, we are tell every woman and man. We want growth and prosperity for a better nation with a building plan. So we can build our product and sell our product and put more money in our hand. Our economy can rise to a level and build a better nation. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand.
Productivity, pathway to prosperity. A message brought to you by the Jamaica Productivity Center, a department of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
Productivity increase is the main driver behind economic growth and wealth creation. This applies to the individual as well as to the wider economy. Now, according to the Jamaica Productivity Center, getting results depends on a few key factors that affect output. We learn more in this next feature.
The Ministry of Labor and Social Security through the Jamaica Productivity Center, JPC, has been developing and implementing programs as well as conducting workshops to assist individuals, companies and firms optimize their efficiency and drive productivity improvement in Jamaica. The JPC recently hosted a virtual session that brought accomplished individuals and high achievers in one setting to share needed information on how productivity can be achieved and its impact on society. Productivity, in simple terms, is how efficient an input is converted to output. When this happens, economic growth and the country's development is fueled because of the increased goods and services produced with greater efficiency. Businesses will realize higher profit as they produce more outputs from lower input due to the systems they implement. Their competitiveness will improve and they will be able to better compensate employees. Citizens will realize improvements in their standard of living and will be able to exercise higher levels of consumption of goods and services even with reduced working hours. Higher economic growth measured by increased gross domestic product (GDP) output resulting from an increase in productivity will also benefit the country. How? Through the generation of larger tax revenue for government. This allows for greater investments in infrastructure and services, including education, healthcare, welfare, transportation, roads, water, and more. Gross domestic product (GDP) is the sum of labor productivity, capital intensity growth, and total factor productivity. Therefore, increases in all three areas equate to us having a booming economy. JPC has found that there are several factors that hamper productivity that need to be treated with urgency. They include bureaucracy, low value-added production, crime, traffic congestion, lack of suitable technology and capital investment, as well as job and skill mismatch and limiting international trade flows. As it relates to labor productivity, the JPC recommends that companies and firms, public or private, small or large, research what is happening in their industry and make innovative changes on a consistent basis. Where enterprises are shifting from being more labor-intensive to technology, such as artificial intelligence, they must seek to create the right balance between human effort and technology to optimize productivity. Integrating the right technology and a smart business process that is measurable, result-based and time-based is now an essential part of the solution for firms to optimize productivity. This includes establishing customer service platforms and payment gateways that are responsive. Every worker needs to know what is required of them, with the worker and supervisor using verifiable established targets.
You cannot improve if you're not measuring. You won't know what to do, and we'll just be all based on a gut feeling. And so that's one of the things we want to encourage us, even as individuals, organizations, to have that culture or habit of measuring what matters, right? And not just measuring everything, but measuring what matters and working to improve on those gaps that exist.
The Labour and Social Security Ministry, through the Jamaica Productivity Centre, has started its very own modernization exercise through the institution of a digital records management system, moving a number of its services online as it upgrades its network and investing in new technologies to improve efficiency. Investing in research and development and facilitating the creative, scientific and technological expertise of Jamaicans will spur innovation and the creation of new products and services to transform industries to meet the demands of the fourth industrial revolution.
For example, we have agriculture. Agriculture could be transformed to an high-level agricultural sector. And I'm thinking also with that, there can also be greater linkages between the goods producing and service producing sector.
Enhancing productivity, quality and competitiveness through world-class individuals will require a culture of continuous training.
We have to learn how to accept or create structures that allow innovation, allow change, to build a culture of continuous learning and improvement. Let us start with access to broadband. Broadband can give us that quantum leap forward in Jamaica, tied with a digital literacy program for people of all ages, tied with schools that focus on continuous learning and continuous improvement.
We need higher education and more focused training programs, upskilling the global services industry. So that's basically like the BPO.
There's the possibility for individuals to use the internet and free education available online to advance productivity and for maximizing on remote working in this increasingly digital world.
Working on your own individual digital literacy, being familiar with the tools that are out there, not just for consumption, but what the possibilities are. And there's so many resources online that you can find to do that. Coursera, Udemy, and these are their platforms in their own right. Another one too that's really good, because I find that the things on Coursera and Udemy tend to maybe work best if you've already completed high school and university. If you need to bring your math skills up to date, you can use a resource like Khan Academy.
Increased education and training, certification, quality management and leadership, rewards and incentives, innovation, having the right technology, automation and tools, and using those to full capacity are all key tenets of long-term productivity. Of course, all this doesn't necessarily mean working harder. Instead, it's all about working smarter.
To properly carry out a hand rub, apply a palmful of the product in your cupped hand, covering all surfaces. Rub your hands palm to palm. Rub your right palm over the back of your left hand with interlaced fingers and vice versa. Rub your hands palm to palm with fingers interlaced. Rub the back of your fingers to opposing palms with fingers interlocked. Rotationally rub backwards and forwards the clasped fingers of your right hand in your left palm and vice versa. Once your hands are dry, they are now safe.
The goods producing sector plays an important role in sustainable economic growth and job creation. So government's plan to grow the economy and create wealth is facilitating the expansion of manufacturing and warehousing space at the Marcus Garvey Drive Free Zone. Take a look.
Excited FCJ to be embarking on this expansion program. This represents the largest industrial complex in Jamaica. and we are doing it in 3 phases. Phase 1, where we'll be adding 126,000 square feet of warehouse spaces to accommodate warehousing distribution for both large, medium, and small enterprises. Phase 2 will see we go into a further expansion where we will be expanding to have greater frontage at the Marcus Garvey Drive. As you know, we are located near shore, near sea, and to the port. So this is a very important complex. We are presently 100% occupancy, and we are getting demand over and over. And on an average, I would say per year, we get at least 400,000 square feet demand at Garmix. So with 100% occupancy now, it just spells sense that we go into our expansion mode.
Early in the pandemic, I gave the clearance for the construction industry to proceed. And I'm happy to see that the Factories Corporation has heeded that advice and is moving ahead with this massive construction project. It is also their mandate to spur investment. And so they are now investing in expanding warehousing capacity. This is not just capacity to support large industries or the logistics sector. It is also capacity to support the small, medium-sized, and micro business people who want space at reasonable cost to operate. And this is why I endorse this project. There was a period of time when this place was not fully occupied. Now, the Garmix Free Zone is fully occupied, and people want more space. It is a sign that there is fundamental demand in the economy, that there is real demand in the economy. The economists call it effective demand. It is a good sign, and I encourage the construction industry to move ahead with speed and alacrity with the projects that they have on their books.
An important message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. What to do if you think you have been exposed or are experiencing signs and symptoms of COVID-19. Immediately call 888-1-LOVE. That's 888-663-5683. In addition, you should stay at home. Don't go to work, school, or any public place. Do not use public transport, and avoid visitors to your home. You may need to do this for up to 14 days to reduce the spread of the infection. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Important infection control protocols have been put in place to ensure businesses can operate safely during this global pandemic. Watch this next feature to see what is required for workplaces to prevent or keep COVID-19 cases under control.
This workplace protocol is in keeping with the new phase, the latest phase of COVID-19, which is the community transmission phase. Focus is on how to prevent not just getting the virus, but more importantly, managing the virus in our current environment. And that includes how we adjust the workplace so work can take place while we manage the spread that will happen and is happening.
What employers and employees have to recognize is we no longer know who are the positive persons, because there are several positive persons in our community. They look just like you. They move around just like you. They're not having symptoms. They don't know that they're positive, and you're not going to know they're positive. It makes sense, therefore, that everything that you do in your daily operations, whether it is in your home, whether it is in your community, whether it is in your workplace, that those measures are sufficient to protect you and to protect others. And that is why we have the infection prevention and control measures. Organizations need to put in place daily cleaning protocols that are sufficient to kill any virus particles that may remain on surfaces where droplets may fall. Now, basic workplace rules are important for persons wherever it is that you work. And workers are required to wear a mask at work, and they must hand sanitize before entering their work area. Physical distancing, whether you're in an office, whether you're on a factory floor, whatever work it is that you do, physical distancing must be maintained at all work areas. Hand sanitization as you move from one work area to the next is important. In this way, you can even have somebody that is positive, who don't know that they're positive, working alongside you, but they are not transmitting infection to you. They are not exposing you because they are protecting themselves, and you protect yourself as well to decrease that risk of transmission. Management must play an important part in advising workers about COVID-19. Workers are to be advised that if they develop a fever or they're not feeling well, then they should call in and stay home. Workplaces must make those allowances to prevent the possibility of somebody who is symptomatic coming to work. If persons are not feeling better after a few days at home, then they should seek medical advice, and that may include doing a test. If they have done a test and the test is positive, they will be required to stay at home for a minimum of 14 days, including 3 symptom-free days after symptoms are resolved. Now, because whatever workplace they're coming from has been observing all the workplace protocols, and that person would have been in a mask at work, would have been hand sanitizing as they move from area to area, then there is no need to close your business or to send home other workers. If someone in the workplace is observed to be ill and to have a fever or respiratory symptoms, then that person should be sent home. Now, the area in which the person should be wiped with a mild bleach solution, and the surfaces wiped with disinfectant or alcohol. Now, once this is done and the area is dry, then that area is safe to be used. Now, persons who are in contact with the person who was symptomatic, showing symptoms, then those persons, if they have been adhering to their IPC measures, their infection prevention and control measures, then there is no need for those persons to go home. They are allowed to come to work. However, they must obey the instructions and the advice that have been offered from the workplace to say that they must adhere to all infection prevention and control measures. And if they start to feel ill, they must stay home and report that they are ill.
It's going to require significant personal, individual responsibility. The community transmission phase is a phase that requires an all-of-society approach more than any other phase. Everyone has to play their part. That's why we say everyone counts. And in the context of a work environment, every employee, employer, their workspace has to comply with the rules of engagement, assuming that if the virus is present, it is confined to that individual and not going to be spreading across the board. And if we take that approach, then we will make it happen.
I'm sure my neighbors hear the screams and cries.
I'm sure by now they've seen the bruises through my oversized glasses.
Can they tell I'm depressed when we speak?
Are they counting my frequent days off from work?
Domestic violence is any pattern of behavior used by an individual to maintain control or power over another. Domestic violence is not just physical, it can also be verbal. If you're in a relationship where you are being abused or know of anyone, get out and speak up. Report domestic violence by calling 119 or the nearest police station. Get out before someone puts you out.
There is no excuse for abuse or violence of any kind against one another. We must help to put a stop to this kind of behavior. A common issue has been that of domestic and gender-based violence, to which we must not turn a blind eye. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and here's what you need to know.
It is no secret. Jamaica experiences reports of domestic violence.
Sometimes he beat me in front of the picnic them.
There is no excuse for abuse, and the government has implemented a plan with the hope of beating domestic violence out of the country. The data on gender-based violence says much. In Jamaica, 1 in every 4 women is abused. Globally, 1 in every 3 women is a victim. Coupled with that, domestic violence has no regard for age or status. Men are also victims, so too girls as young as age 15, who are being physically, sexually, and emotionally abused in intimate partner relationships. With year-on occurrences of all forms of gender-based violence, the government has been courting several plans to eliminate the act. Finally, a perfect relationship has been formed and has given birth to a 10-year plan for ending this cowardly act. The National Strategic Action Plan to Eliminate Gender-Based Violence in Jamaica, NSAP-GBV for short.
The period is 2017 to 2027, 2017 to 2027. And that plan is predicated on the due diligence framework, which allows us to have 5 strategic priority areas. The first one is prevention. How do we engage key stakeholders so that they become a part of the solution and not a part of the problem?
A major component of the prevention strategic area is the implementation of a No Excuse for Abuse social media-driven campaign.
We are very fortunate to have been blessed with a 3-year MOU through our partner, UN Women, that will allow us to do a 6-month campaign. We think that this campaign should make a huge difference, and we plan to have it rolled out in a very robust manner across communities and engaging different players at different times. The second strategic priority area is protection. That looks at how do we ensure that once the person becomes a victim, there is the adequate provision for shelter, there is provision for psychosocial support and rehabilitation. How do we look at the perpetrator as well?
The third priority strategic area covers the investigation, prosecution, and enforcement of court orders.
So once a person has been a victim, becomes a victim, what sort of mechanisms are in place to ensure that the victim gets redress and gets compensation if that is what is required? And if there is a protection order that is required, how do we ensure that the protection order is taken out and that it is enforced? And if there is an issue with compliance, which happens in some cases, where the perpetrator decides to violate the protection order, how do we ensure that it is enforced? And how do we ensure that the victim has protection? The fourth strategic priority area looks at compensation, reparation, and redress. How do we ensure that victims and survivors have adequate compensation for redress for wrongs that have been done? And how do we compensate? What forms of redress are appropriate? What is affordable given our limited fiscal space? The fifth and final strategic priority area is data collection and the systems by which we have a management of data. Gone are the days where persons talk from their heads about gender-based violence, because we now have a survey findings, a set of survey findings that's put together in a report. It's called the Women's Health Survey, and that survey for us is very important.
Released in 2017, the Women's Health Survey was conducted by the Inter-American Development Bank, UN Women, and the Statistical Institute of Jamaica. It provides facts, not anecdotal information about the violence some persons face. Eliminating gender-based violence will not be a band-aid fix. With the help of local and international partners, government has crafted a research-driven program to involve major stakeholders. The goal is simple yet revolutionary: to bring an end once and for all to this scourge that has crippled families and impacted our country psychologically and financially.
The JIS Heritage Competition is celebrating 10 years of youth expression on Jamaican history, culture, and tradition. If you're a primary level student, 9 to 12 years old, enter the essay competition. Write 400 to 500 words on the topic. I promise to stand up for justice, brotherhood, and peace. Identify a Jamaican from our past or an institution that exemplifies this statement from our national pledge and say why. Secondary level students, enter the poster competition. And tertiary students, send us your best snap for the photo competition. The topic, I promise to stand up for justice, brotherhood, and peace. Enter now and play your part in preserving our national heritage. Great prizes to be won. For competition rules and guidelines, contact the JIS.
We've come to the end of today's edition of Jamaica Magazine, but be sure to join us again tomorrow for another show. Until then, continue to watch these and other programs by logging on to our website, jis.gov.jm, or subscribing to our YouTube channel. You may also find us on all the major social media platforms and through our mobile app that's both Android and iOS compatible. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Theodore Henry. Walk good and stay safe.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.